A homeless woman holding her baby knelt down and begged a millionaire for food. Not long after, the millionaire also knelt down before her because, "Sir, your pumpkin soup." Anna always said it like that, soft, steady, with a slight lift at the end, as if offering not just the bowl, but a pause in the day. She placed it down with practiced grace, steam curling upward in delicate ribbons that carried the scent of roasted squash and nutmeg. It was a comforting aroma, warm, human. Richard Hale didn't respond right away. He gave a small nod, barely perceptible, eyes still trailing the sunbeams that filtered through the green canvas canopy above his table. The breeze carried the faint rustle of city trees shedding their leaves, mixing with murmurs and clinking glasses. It was lunch hour at the Sterling Pavilion, a place where old money met new ambition beneath white tablecloths and marble planters. Richard had been coming here for over a year now, always at the same time, always to the same table in the far right corner of the courtyard. A private table, though it was never officially marked as such. To his left, seated with perfect posture and a barely touched glass of Chardonnay, was Margaret Whitmore, widow of a once influential senator and now a major board member for 2 Ivy League schools. Her 2 granddaughters, dressed in identical plaid dresses, giggled into their napkins as Margaret hushed them with a maternal firmness that never quite masked her pride. Across from them, Elliot Collins, CEO of a real estate data firm, gestured broadly while explaining ROI curves to his nervous-looking protégé, likely a Stanford MBA, with the telltale combination of designer socks and imposter syndrome. Further back sat Natalie Adams, a high-powered divorce attorney who'd made headlines after representing 2 hedge fund wives in the same year. She ate slowly, sharing a tablet screen with her teenage daughter, who nodded without looking up from her phone. Richard watched them all. Not with envy, not even quite with longing, just quiet curiosity. It was like sitting outside an aquarium, watching familiar species swim by in their usual patterns. He looked at his bowl. The soup was the same as always, pumpkin, light cream, a dusting of clove. He liked it because it asked nothing of him. No steak to carve, no flavors that lingered. He hadn't yet lifted the spoon when he noticed a shadow by the table. It moved slowly, with hesitation, then stilled. When Richard looked up, the light caught on her face. Not in a flattering way, but in an honest one. Wind-chafed skin, hair darkened by rain, the outline of a shoulder too narrow under a jacket that had long since given up the job of warmth. A baby clung to her chest, half hidden in a cloth sling, asleep, or maybe just silent in that way children become when they've learned quiet means safe. Her voice, when it came, was steady, but hollow. "Please. I'm sorry. Could I have some of your soup? My son. He can't eat anything else." Richard blinked, not at the request, at her posture. She knelt, one knee down, then the other, slowly, like it physically pained her, though not out of weakness, out of something more like restraint. She didn't weep, didn't plead. She looked him in the eye. All around them, the clinking slowed. Forks hovered. A napkin dropped and was not picked up. The world watched without breathing. Richard did not answer. Not at first. His eyes flicked from her face to the baby, then to the soup. His fingers curled slightly around the bowl's base. He thought of Miles, of the tiny socks they'd kept even after he was gone, of the sound Claire's voice made when she read bedtime stories aloud to a boy who would never finish the series. He nudged the bowl forward, across the table, with the back of his hand. She didn't lunge, didn't thank him. Instead, she reached into her worn satchel and pulled out a square of clean cloth. She sat cross-legged on the pavement, still in the rain, still under scrutiny, and balanced the cloth across her lap. With her free hand, She unscrewed a small plastic spoon from a cracked baby food lid, stirred, blew gently, then gently fed her child. The boy stirred, opened his mouth, swallowed, let out a breathy sound, half sigh, half giggle, and blinked up at her. That was when Richard looked away. "Manager's on her way," Walter, the security guard, murmured nearby, eyes uncertain. "Not much I can do, Mr. Hale." And then came Haley, the manager, mid-30s, ambitious, always on edge when something threatened the atmosphere. "This is a private establishment," she snapped. "She can't just sit here like this." "She's not doing anything wrong," Anna whispered, stepping forward. "You want to keep your job?" Haley shot back. "Then stand down." Haley turned to Walter. "Get her out of here, now." Walter hesitated, took a step forward. Richard stood. The movement was slow, but it cut through the air like glass through silk. "Walter," he said evenly, "sit down." Walter stopped. "Haley," Richard continued, "you're about to scold a woman for feeding her child soup. You think that's the kind of policy we're proud to enforce?" "She's trespassing, sir. We have a reputation." Richard pulled out his checkbook, wrote deliberately, and tore the page. "This should cover the soup," he said, handing her the slip, "and the discomfort of your reputation." Haley stiffened, jaw clenched. The woman finished feeding her child, wiped his chin with a corner of the cloth, packed the spoon away, stood. Her voice was soft but full. "Thank you." For the soup, Richard handed her a business card. It was plain. Name, number, no title. "If you ever need anything," he said, "call me." She took it with both hands, looked at him like someone trying to memorize the face of a brief kindness. Then she turned and walked away, past the stunned diners, past the walls of silence and judgment. The baby in her arms turned once, looked over her shoulder, and smiled. Richard sat again. The soup had cooled, but somehow the air felt warmer. The building across from the old Presbyterian church had been boarded up for nearly 6 years. Ivy choked its brick walls, windows smeared in dust and rain streaks. Every few weeks, someone tagged it with a new layer of spray paint, sometimes a name, sometimes a plea. "Let me be enough," read the latest one. No one noticed. Or if they did, they didn't mention it. Richard Hale sat in his parked car across the street. The dashboard clock blinked 7:42 a.m. Outside, mist lingered at knee height and turned the city's edges soft. His coffee had gone cold beside him. He didn't seem to mind. He was watching a sedan, early 2000s, once silver, now something closer to ash. A blanket was clipped up inside the rear windows for privacy, but through the windshield he could see her silhouette, slumped forward. Still, she hadn't called. After that afternoon at the Sterling Pavilion, Richard waited. Not consciously, perhaps, not in the way a man waits by the phone, hoping, but he kept the card near him, checked his phone more often than usual, told himself it was habit. 3 days later, he called Sarah. "Look," he'd said, tone clipped to hide the discomfort, "I gave a woman my card. She didn't call, but I think she might need help. She was with a child." There was a pause on the line. Sarah had worked with him for over a decade. She understood what he said and what he didn't. "I'll look into shelters," she'd replied. And she had. Now, this was where the trail led, a side lot behind a closed-down church, just west of Lenox Avenue, where a handful of displaced people had created a hushed kind of refuge. Richard had visited the spot once already, after dark, from a distance. He hadn't approached. He didn't want to frighten her, or maybe he didn't know what he would say. Instead, the next morning, he came with a bag. It wasn't anything extraordinary. A thermos of warm soup, a pack of wipes, a soft baby blanket, still in its wrapper. One tin of formula. No note. No name. He left it at the foot of the driver's door, just far enough that she wouldn't miss it. The next day, he did it again. Same time. Different bag. Some diapers. 2 applesauce pouches. A small packet of disposable hand warmers. He told himself it was just until she reached out, until she found her way back. She didn't. But the bags disappeared, and once, as he sat waiting, he saw her exit the car, slowly, carefully, with Liam bundled in her coat. She looked down at the package, hesitated. Her hand hovered over the handle, like it wasn't quite hers. Then she knelt, not to pray, not to plead, but to unzip the bag, fingers tracing its contents as if memorizing them. Richard watched her lift the baby blanket, press it against her cheek, and then fold it neatly across her lap. She didn't smile, but her shoulders loosened, almost imperceptibly. Later, she murmured to Liam. He couldn't hear, not through the windows, but he saw her lips move. "Thank you," she said, "but I can't." Inside the car, Richard leaned back, pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of his nose. He wasn't sure what he wanted from her. Not gratitude, not apology. Just something. A signal she still saw him. He returned each morning, not always staying. Sometimes he just dropped the bag and left. Other times, he remained in his car, watching the fog burn away from the windshield, listening to classical stations he didn't really like. Twice, Anna texted to ask if he was all right when she saw him hadn't been to the restaurant for a long time. "Don't worry," he'd replied. "Just driving." On the 5th morning, it snowed lightly, just a dusting, enough to soften the city's edges again. The sedan's wipers were frozen. Frost clung to the side mirrors. Richard approached on foot this time. Slowly, bag in hand. As he neared the car, he saw Evelyn inside. She wasn't asleep. She was sitting upright, Liam asleep across her chest, and the card he'd given her between her fingers. Her thumb rubbed the edge over and over, like it was a worry stone. She didn't notice him right away. When she did, she didn't flinch. She didn't open the door either. He raised the bag slightly, in a silent offer. Through the glass, she nodded. He set it down, turned, walked back to his car. She never stepped out that morning. But as he glanced in the rearview mirror before pulling away, he saw the card still in her hand, pressed against the window, like something halfway between a promise and a boundary. Later that day, back in his office, Sarah entered with a file. She's clean. No criminal record. Real name's Evelyn Moore. 26. Dropped out of a nursing program 2 years ago. Richard looked up. She's got no hospital records since the delivery. No insurance. No driver's license. Just a social from when she was a kid. He nodded once. Thanks. Sarah paused. Are you going to do something official? A foundation outreach? Press? No, he said after a beat. Not yet. Sarah studied him for a moment, then left the room. That night, as the city lights blinked on like hesitant stars, Evelyn sat in the front seat of the car, Liam wrapped in the baby blanket, finally warm. She held the card again, pressed the number into her phone, but didn't hit call. Just sat there, thumb on the screen, as if holding it still might be enough. And outside, across the street, a black sedan idled with its lights off, watching, waiting, not to save her, but simply to be near in case she chose to be found. Some nights, the rain didn't fall so much as it hovered, an invisible thread pulled across the city's breath. The kind of rain that didn't soak you right away, but crept into the seams of your coat, found your collarbone, settled in your hair. It wasn't violent. It was persistent. The old church lot was silent, except for the low rustle of wind through trash bags and the soft groan of wet metal expanding under cold. Richard didn't leave that evening. He remained in his car, engine off, windshield slowly fogging up at the corners, wipers at rest, lights dimmed. He was watching. Not obsessively, not even with intent. Just watching. Across the street, the silver sedan hadn't moved. Inside, Evelyn sat still, body curled protectively around the baby. The rear blanket drooped slightly from one window, revealing a glimpse of Liam's tiny socks, blue, mismatched, wrinkled at the toes. Earlier that week, Richard had made a call. The pediatrician who answered didn't ask many questions. She was used to odd requests, especially when they came with donations attached. "Say you're with a mobile outreach clinic," Richard had instructed. "Don't press. Don't offer more than she asks." Dr. Tamara Hill arrived the next morning, mid-40s, ponytail, jeans tucked into boots. She tapped gently on the sedan's window, spoke softly, waited. Evelyn listened. Then, without a word, she cracked the door open and nodded once. 20 minutes later, the car door shut again. Tamara sent a single text to Richard. He's small for his age, but alert. She's doing fine, better than most. Richard didn't reply. Evelyn had rules. She sterilized the baby's bottle using boiled water from the gas station coffee machine, cleaned Liam's hands with wipes before every feeding, tucked his legs into layers of fleece even when the sun peeked through. At night, she folded his clothes for the next day, 3 pairs, rotated religiously. She kept his pacifier in a Ziploc, cleaned daily. She recorded his feedings in a worn leather notebook, tracking ounces and hours. She spoke to him constantly, not in cooing nonsense, but in full thoughts. "It's not enough, I know," she whispered once, brushing his cheek with the back of her hand. "But we're trying. You and me." Richard saw none of this directly. He saw glimpses, the edge of her head bent forward as she read from a picture book with a missing cover, the flicker of light from a battery-powered lantern. Once, a sock puppet held up against the window, dancing for an invisible audience. Liam laughed, a clear sound that carried across the pavement and into Richard's chest like a pinprick. He brought new things, always in silence. A better lantern, a new box of diapers, little jars of mashed carrots, a soft rattle that squeaked when squeezed. He never left a note. Evelyn never left a thank you. But the bag was always gone the next morning, and sometimes her blanket over the window would be folded a little neater, as if acknowledging his presence without giving in to it. One night, the rain came hard, heavy. Wind lashed against the building like it was trying to remind it of something. Trash cans tipped. The awning over Richard's car flapped until it tore. But still, he stayed. He kept his headlights off. But one lamp, a small reading light near the glove box, cast just enough glow to illuminate the sedan across from him. Inside, he saw movement. Evelyn stirred, sat up, looked toward his car. She didn't try to identify it, didn't squint or shield her eyes. She reached for the curtain behind the driver's seat and slowly pulled it closed, but left a small triangular gap near the bottom, just enough light to leak through, just enough to say, "I see you." By morning, the rain had washed everything clean, except the sidewalk itself. It was still grey, still cracked, but the trash was gone. The graffiti softened, the ivy on the church dripped green like it had just remembered how to grow. Richard stepped out of his car earlier than usual. The bag he brought today was smaller, just a box of cereal puffs, a new spoon with a rubber edge, and a folded note card. This time, not a business card. Just 5 words in his handwriting. "You're doing better than fine." He placed it inside the bag, zipped it shut, and laid it gently by the car, then walked away, not looking back. Inside the sedan, Evelyn hadn't slept. Liam was gnawing on his hand, eyes alert. She kissed his forehead, then sat him upright against a pillow propped between two blankets. She reached for the cereal, smiled faintly, then unzipped the bag. When she found the note, she held it longer than anything else. She didn't read it out loud. She folded it, slid it into the baby book, then turned back to her son. "We'll stay another night," she whispered, "but just one more." Outside, the clouds lifted just enough for sunlight to scatter through the branches. Liam squealed, waving the spoon in the air like a flag. And Evelyn, eyes on the messy curl of his hair, laughed. The kind of laugh that doesn't ask to be heard. The kind meant only for the one who made it possible. The wind had shifted overnight. It was no longer brushing the edges of the city, it now moved through it, with purpose. Banners on lampposts flapped hard enough to slap metal. Leaves chased each other across sidewalks like children left unsupervised. And inside the silver sedan, Liam burned. Evelyn had woken to his whimpers, the kind that didn't rise to a cry, but settled low in the throat, ragged and unsure. His forehead was hotter than it had ever been, his lips pale, dry, and parted slightly as he struggled to breathe through his nose. She murmured to him, wiping sweat from his chest with the hem of her sleeve. "It's okay, baby. Just the air's too dry, that's all. We'll get you feeling better." But the wheeze deepened. The tiny body in her arms curled inward, like something trying to fold itself, smaller than pain. Evelyn's hands trembled as she soaked a cloth with the last of their bottled water and pressed it to his brow. It cooled quickly in the air. Too quickly. She whispered nonsense into his ear. Fragments of lullabies, snatches of grocery lists, her own name, repeated like a prayer she didn't believe in. And then, sometime after midnight, she gave up, pretending it would pass. She wrapped him tightly, tucked the baby book into her coat pocket, and stepped out into the street. The hospital lobby was all hard angles and colder light. Reception sat behind a glass divider, backlit and silent, typing with her nails. Evelyn didn't approach immediately. She stood just inside the door, clutching Liam to her chest. She looked down. His eyes were half-lidded, his breath shallow and fast. Evelyn walked forward. "Please," she said, voice tight. "He's got a fever. I think he's not breathing right." The receptionist glanced up, indifferent. "Insurance?" "I don't have it," Evelyn said. "But He's sick. Please. Can you ID? I lost it. I mean, someone took my bag. I can't. No ID, no insurance." The woman's tone didn't rise. It didn't fall. It simply stopped. "We can't admit without proof of identity. You can try a free clinic in the morning." "But he needs help now." The receptionist turned to her monitor again. Evelyn backed away, stunned. The weight of Liam in her arms suddenly felt like too much. She stumbled toward a plastic bench in the hallway, sat down, and kissed his damp forehead again and again. Across the hallway, a nurse named Beverly passed by, kind-eyed, ponytail too tight. Evelyn caught her arm. "Please, can I borrow your phone? Just for a minute. I need to—" "Sorry," Beverly muttered. "I can't." She glanced at Evelyn and walked off. Evelyn stared after her, lips parted in disbelief. Then came the shuffle of a different kind of step. Measured, older, wrapped in cashmere and quiet perfume. A woman in her 70s, coat perfectly pressed, a book in her hands. She stopped beside the bench. "You can use mine," the woman said. Evelyn looked up. The woman smiled faintly. "Helen, my husband's getting his dialysis. Been here since noon. You look like you need this more than I do." Evelyn reached for the phone, grateful, but frozen. "Thank you, Helen," she whispered. Thank you." Helen nodded toward the baby. "You're doing everything right. Don't forget that." Evelyn took out the card. It was slightly crumpled from being held too often and used too little. She typed the number. "Help us." That was all. Richard read the text at 2:17 a.m. He didn't reply. He didn't call. He arrived. 6 minutes later, glass doors hissed open as a man in a dark coat swept into the lobby. Tall, direct. He didn't speak to the receptionist. He didn't pause. His eyes found Evelyn immediately. Her face pale, the baby nearly limp in her arms. He walked straight to her, reached out, took Liam carefully, confidently, cradled him like someone who had done this before, and also like someone who had not for a very long time. Then, to no one in particular, he said, "Triage." Now. Beverly appeared from a side hallway, hesitated. "Sir, I—" Richard looked at her. One glance, no malice, just certainty. She turned. "This way." They disappeared through the double doors. Evelyn stood alone in the fluorescent hallway. She hadn't cried in weeks. Not when the bank closed her account. Not when her last spare bottle of formula spilled inside the glove box. Not even the night she first slept in the car. But now, she felt her knees shake. She sat, slowly, one row of chairs behind where Helen had been. A moment passed. Another. Then she whispered, to no one this time, not even Liam. "I knew it was you," she said, "from the beginning. I knew you were helping." Her hands twisted together in her lap. She stared at the scuff marks on the floor. "I didn't call because I didn't know how to be seen like this. By someone like you. Someone decent." Silence. Then the sound of steps. Richard sat beside her. He didn't look at her, just exhaled, slowly. The sound of a man holding more than one weight. She didn't look at him either. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Not for needing help, just for being afraid of it." He shook his head once. "For a child," he said, voice low. "No one owes an apology." They sat that way for a long time, not touching, not even facing each other. But the space between them had changed, not vanished, but loosened, enough to let light through. It began with a question spoken into stillness. "Do you think he needs a home?" Richard asked Sarah without preamble. He stood near the wide window in his office, coffee cooling untouched in his hand, the morning light glinting off the buildings below. His voice didn't rise. It wasn't really a question. Sarah, seated behind her desk, with her reading glasses resting at the bridge of her nose, paused before replying. "I think he already has one," she said, watching Richard closely. "But if you mean a roof, 4 walls, running water and heat, then yes, he needs that too." Richard nodded once. "Leave a comment pencil if you're listening to this story with a loved one. And if you're alone, write eraser. Find one. Nothing big, just safe, and east-facing windows. Sunlight? Every morning," he said. "It matters." The apartment wasn't luxurious. It wasn't meant to be. 2 rooms, a kitchen the size of a generous closet, a bathtub with scuffed enamel. But it had hardwood floors that warmed underfoot when the sun rose. It had a working stove, a clean crib, fresh paint on the window frames. And on the second floor, through those tall windows, golden light spilled in, like it was always meant to belong there. Evelyn stood at the doorway when they arrived. She didn't step in right away. She held Liam tighter against her hip, his face still a little flushed, the doctor's band still loose around his wrist. "I don't know," she said softly. "The car's been fine. It keeps out the wind. I have a system." Richard didn't push. He held out the keys in an open palm. "The pediatrician said he needs a better place to recover," he said. Her lips tightened, but not in anger, more like acceptance. She took the keys without a word. The first night in the apartment was quiet. Evelyn didn't sleep for hours. She sat beside the crib, listening to Liam's breathing even after it had evened out. She turned the baby monitor on and off 3 times, testing its signal. She checked the locks, twice. And when the first crack of morning appeared behind the curtains, she pulled them open just enough to let the warmth reach the edge of the bed. She whispered, "You're safe," not sure if she meant him or herself. Richard came by early. He brought a brown bag from a corner bakery in Soho, apple, muffins, crusty bread, and a cup of diced fruit sealed with a plastic lid. He didn't knock like he owned the place. He knocked like someone asking permission. "I was nearby," he said. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "This place is 40 minutes from your office. I drive fast." She didn't smile, but her voice didn't bite either. "You don't have to," he shrugged. "I pass this way." And just like that, it became a routine. Each morning, the knock came. Sometimes earlier than she expected, sometimes later, but it always came. One day, he brought baby lotion. Another, a rubber duck. Once, a tiny set of stacking cups that Liam stared at like they were ancient treasure. He didn't stay long, just helped unbox the new things, then lingered near the crib. Evelyn let him. She didn't ask why. She didn't remind him they weren't family. She just watched. He was clumsy at first, his hands too large, his instincts off. He wiped too hard, poured too much formula, fumbled with the diaper tabs. But Liam giggled. Every time Richard walked in, the boy's face lit up, arms flailing in soft applause. Evelyn couldn't look away from that. One morning, she found herself folding his things. Not Liam's, Richard's, his spare baby wipes, the bib he'd left behind, the tiny spoon he used to test the applesauce for temperature before offering it to Liam. She placed them in a side drawer. Neat, careful, permanent. Later that week, as the sun spilled across the kitchen table, Evelyn took out a small photo in a cracked frame. It was the only one she had of her mother, before illness, before the silence between them. She placed it by the window, just beneath the potted basil Sarah had brought by. Beside the photo, she tucked the baby blanket Richard had first left in one of those bags, back when they hadn't yet spoken, beyond 5 words. The apartment didn't feel like shelter anymore. It felt like pause, like space, like home. That morning, Richard arrived with a container of cut mango and a folded crossword. Evelyn was feeding Liam mashed peas, who responded with enthusiastic grunts between bites. "You might have overdone the mango," she said as he stepped in. "He'll never accept anything green again." "I like a man with taste," Richard replied. He leaned over to tickle Liam's belly and was rewarded with a high-pitched shriek of delight. Then, just as he turned to toss a wipe in the trash, it came. "Dad, Mom," software garbled, but unmistakable. Both adults froze. Richard looked at Evelyn. Her hand hovered mid-air, a half-spoonful of peas trembling at the edge. Liam bounced in his seat, delighted by the sound of his own voice. "Dad, Dad," he repeated, pointing a small, sticky finger at Richard. Evelyn set the spoon down. Her eyes glistened, not from sadness, but from the unbearable tenderness of the moment. She didn't correct the boy, didn't say it was too soon, didn't look away. She smiled, soft and full. And for the first time in many, many years, Richard Hale felt something unfurl in his chest. Not duty, not pity, not even guilt. Just warmth, real, quiet, and patient enough to stay. The night pressed in gently, not with cold, but with stillness, the kind of quiet that softened even the sirens in the distance. On the small balcony, Evelyn poured 2 mugs of chamomile tea. The steam coiled upward like smoke from a memory. Inside, Liam had fallen asleep, his cheeks flushed from the remains of a low-grade fever. She stepped out, handed one mug to Richard, and didn't say anything for a while. Neither did he. They sat, shoulders angled just far enough apart to feel polite, close enough to feel familiar. The street below flickered with life. A bus sighed as it turned the corner. A man walked his dog in silence. The corner deli's neon sign buzzed once before settling. Above them, stars strained to be seen through the city haze. Then Evelyn spoke. "I used to think I had a plan," she began. Her voice wasn't dramatic, just honest. "I was in nursing school, 3rd year. I had steady grades, some scholarships. I thought I'd go into pediatrics. I liked the rhythm of caring." Richard didn't interrupt. His tea sat untouched. "There was a guy. He wasn't serious, not the way I thought he might be. When I told him I was pregnant, he froze. Looked like I'd set something heavy in his lap he didn't know how to carry." She gave a dry laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "He left that night, took his jacket, didn't say goodbye, never answered again." She glanced toward the baby monitor through the balcony door, checking the soft glow of the screen. "When I told my parents, they were not surprised, just disappointed in all the ways they knew how to weaponize. My mum said I was throwing away every chance she'd worked to give me. My dad wouldn't even look at me. They said if I kept the baby, I couldn't stay." Richard shifted slightly, but still didn't speak. "I didn't think I was brave," Evelyn said. "I wasn't defiant. I wasn't strong. I was just already in love. I couldn't undo that." She set her mug down, her hands folding in her lap. "I tried staying with a friend for a while, then another. People get tired of need. Eventually, I ended up renting rooms by the night, had Liam in a motel on Perry Street, the kind where you have to wedge a chair under the door at night." Her voice thinned, not with shame, but with something older, worn. "They thought I was high when I came in to deliver, didn't believe I had no one, asked me if the father would be showing up. I said no. The nurse said, 'Figures.'" She pulled her knees up slightly, cradling them with one arm. "I didn't have a baby shower. I didn't have a hospital bag. I had one swaddle and a pair of socks someone left in the donation bin. But he came out healthy, pink and loud and looking at me like I was the only person in the world." She paused, then added, "And I guess, in that moment I was." Richard finally lifted his tea. He didn't drink it, just held it between his palms like something breakable. "You've done all this," he said, after a long stretch of silence. "Alone." Evelyn shrugged. "Alone is easier than asking. No one holds it against you if you don't need anything." He didn't argue. Instead, he turned slightly, facing her more fully. "What you've done? What you're still doing? It's more than most could." Her eyes softened, but she didn't look away. "It's not about strength. It's just, I look at him, and I can't do anything else." They sat like that until the tea cooled, the air turned crisp, and the world inside felt a little less crowded. The next morning, Richard didn't wait until passing by. He arrived early, knocking once and entering with a familiarity he hadn't allowed himself before. He carried a bag with 2 croissants and a tiny jar of baby food with Liam's name written in marker on the lid. No excuses, no pretenses. From that morning on, he stopped pretending he was just a passerby. He came because he meant to. But just as something steadier was beginning to form between them, trouble arrived from the outside, loud, sharp, and full of headlines. Simon Parker, a tabloid journalist known for his relentless chase of scandal and scandal-adjacent speculation, had been trailing Richard for weeks. He'd caught wind of the billionaire's daily visits to a modest apartment in the East Village, and naturally imagined the worst. With a telephoto lens and poor ethics, he captured 3 images. One of Richard entering the apartment with a paper bag, one of Evelyn opening the door barefoot, holding Liam, and one of Richard crouched on the living room floor, helping the baby stack blocks. It didn't take long for the article to go live. A billionaire who willingly falls in love with a young woman, or a widow disguised as a young woman who eats millionaires. Richard Hale, from a model CEO to a single mother's boyfriend no one knows about, dating secretly. Is this true love, or a play staged by this mysterious woman? The photographs circulated within hours, across social media, on gossip forums, and inevitably into the inboxes of every board member Richard had ever stood beside. Sarah called immediately. "You need to get ahead of this," she said. "Henry's already trying to set up an emergency vote. There's talk of an ethics review." "I gave a child a safe home," Richard replied, voice low but unwavering. "If that's the scandal, they can print it in bold." But Sarah's voice lowered. "This isn't about facts, it's about spin. You're not just a man in their eyes, you're an image, and they think she's tearing it down." By midday, Henry Blake stormed into Richard's office without knocking. His suit was impeccable, his smile was not. "This crosses a line," Blake said, slapping the printed article on the desk. "What line is that?" Richard asked, calm. "The one between your public life and private indulgences. She's 26. She has no background, no references, no—" "She's raising a child alone," Richard interrupted. "That's all the reference I need. She's dangerous." "To whom?" Richard's tone dropped colder. "To your reputation. Or to the story you prefer, that billionaires don't get close to real people." Blake leaned in, teeth clenched. "Choose your battles, Richard, because you're choosing them in full view now." Richard leaned back and didn't blink. That night, Evelyn sat on the edge of the crib, watching Liam sleep. The news hadn't reached her yet. The world still spun at the pace of lullabies and boiled water for bottles. But outside her window, a war was building, and Richard Hale, quiet, steadfast, impossibly stubborn, was already bracing for it, not to win, but to protect. The magazine was damp and creased, stuck halfway under a broken crate beside a row of trash bins in a narrow alley behind the Church Street apartments. Donna Moore nearly stepped over it until the name caught her eye. "Richard Hale," she said aloud, squinting at the byline. She flipped the cover, fingers trembling slightly, and stared at the grainy black and white image of Evelyn holding Liam at the threshold of some modest apartment. Next to her, unmistakable in profile, stood Richard. She clutched the magazine and turned, walking quickly down the sidewalk. Inside their small kitchen, the light above the stove buzzed. Caleb sat at the table, scraping butter over dry toast. Donna dropped the magazine in front of him. He frowned. "What's this?" "Turn to page 4. He did, slowly, read in silence. Then, "That girl." Donna crossed her arms. "Our girl." They didn't say Evelyn's name often, not since the night she left. "She's with him," Donna added, "not just helping. He's visiting her, bringing things." Caleb's eyes didn't leave the page. "Hale. That's the tech guy. Richer than God." Donna's mouth tightened. "Maybe it's time we pay her a visit." His laugh was small and sharp. "You want to catch up? Bring cookies?" "I want what we deserve." Caleb leaned back. "She ran off and shamed us." "She's in headlines now," Donna snapped. "She made us look like fools. But we're still her parents, Caleb. People forget that, and that means we know things. Things others would love to hear." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll find out where she lives." The hallway was silent, but Evelyn could hear her pulse, sharp and quick, like the sound of a drawer being slammed shut over and over again. She stood in the shadow of the apartment's doorframe, holding Liam closer than usual, her fingers digging lightly into the folds of his blanket. She hadn't heard the knock, only the footsteps. Caleb Moore was taller than she remembered. Maybe it was the coat, long, navy, military in cut, Or maybe it was the years. He stood like someone used to getting what he asked for, even if it came through threat instead of trust. Beside him, Donna looked thinner, harder. Her lipstick bled slightly at the edges, and her eyes scanned the apartment with distaste rather than curiosity. They didn't say hello. They didn't ask how she was. "We saw the article," Caleb said. His voice was low, meant to sound calm, but Evelyn had grown up reading the tone beneath it. This wasn't conversation. It was warning. Donna crossed her arms. "That billionaire you're with, real convenient, huh?" Evelyn shifted Liam against her shoulder, her mouth suddenly dry. "We're not—" "Save it," Caleb snapped. "You always had a way of making things look worse than they were. Always the victim. Always the girl who got wronged." Donna spoke then, not to Evelyn, but toward the room. "Is this where he comes to play house? It's nice, modest. Guess even millionaires need to slum it sometimes." Evelyn didn't move. "What do you want?" she asked. Her father smiled. It was the same smile he used when closing the garage door after punishing silence. The same one he wore when telling neighbors she had gone off to college early, even when he'd thrown her out just 2 weeks before. "We want to keep quiet," he said, "but that doesn't come free. You've got yourself something valuable now. Press loves a scandal. We don't want to talk. But if we're forced to, well, that's not on us." Donna added, "Would be a shame if everyone found out how you ended up here. With a baby and no degree. Would really ruin his image, wouldn't it?" Evelyn tightened her grip on Liam. He stirred, then settled again. "You're blackmailing me," she said quietly. Caleb shrugged. "Call it a fee for our silence, for the years you wasted." Evelyn swallowed hard. The walls felt too thin, the ceiling too low. Her vision narrowed slightly around the edges. "I don't have anything," she whispered. Caleb raised an eyebrow. "But he does." She looked away. Her heart hurt in places that had only just begun to heal. When she turned back to them, her voice had steadied. "Give me a day." Donna scoffed. "We'll give you 12 hours. They left as quickly as they came. The door closed behind them with a click that felt like it echoed through her spine. That evening, Evelyn didn't cook. She didn't read to Liam. She didn't do anything except sit on the couch, holding the card Richard had given her. Not the first one, a newer one, with a different number. Private. She pressed the digits into her phone, but didn't call. Instead, she waited. At 9:37 p.m., she opened the door. Richard stood there, holding 2 paper bags, one from the bakery, one heavier. "I got you those muffins again," he said, "the cinnamon kind." She didn't answer. Inside, he set the bags down, turned, and saw the look on her face. "Is Liam okay?" She nodded. "He's sleeping." Then, before she could lose the courage, she lied. "He's not well," she said. "The fever's back. The doctor wants tests." Richard's brow furrowed. "Of course. Whatever he needs." Her gaze dropped to the floor. "I don't have the money. I thought I could manage, but—" He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a sleek wallet. From it, a black card, heavy, matte, with a platinum edge. "No limits," he said, offering it to her. "Use what you need." Evelyn took it with shaking hands. "Thank you." But she didn't meet his eyes. She left that night, saying she needed air. The train platform smelled of warm metal and wet concrete. She sat on a cold bench near the edge. Liam nestled in her lap, breathing slow. The card felt heavier than it should have, like it was made of more than plastic and ink. She stared at the edge of the platform for what felt like hours. Then, slowly, deliberately, she stood. Late evening rain had softened into a mist that cloaked the city in quiet. Evelyn walked toward the train station, coat damp and collar pulled snug, Liam asleep against her chest. Her steps echoed on wet pavement. Each footfall felt heavier than the last, like she carried not just fatigue, but guilt. When she reached the platform, it was nearly deserted. A flickering lamp cast a single golden circle on the bench. She sat, placing Liam gently at her side, head resting against her shoulder. The card, Richard's platinum bank card, felt obscene in her pocket. With every breath, she replayed his kindness and her lie. Her conscience pressed against her, a dull ache forming in her chest. He trusted me. I lied. She gazed at the tracks, imagining them stretching out to some place she could vanish. Her fingers tightened around Liam's blanket. Then she noticed him, an old man sitting a few feet away. His coat was patched and his scarf frayed. He leaned on a cane, eyes closed, yet his presence seemed deliberate, anchored. When her sob merged with a distant train whistle, he opened his eyes. "Your heart's loud tonight," he said softly, voice like gravel warmed by wood smoke. Evelyn started. "Excuse me." He shifted forward. "I heard it," he continued, "screaming in your head. The lie you told him. You're torn." She blinked, surprised he knew. "How could you—" He offered a knowing smile. "Some truths can't be buried. The conscience shouts when you try." Her eyes filled. "You don't know him." He nodded. "I do. I'm a psychic. I see through every heart in the world. A man who built himself on anchor and heart. He believed in you. He believed in better." She looked away. The rain whispered on the rails. "Go back," he said quietly, "before it's too late." Her breath hitched. The lamp flickered. Evelyn rose without words. She hugged Liam close, whispered into his hair, then turned toward the exit. Rain had picked up again, droplets pattering on the pavement. She hurried forward, coat soaked, hair clinging to her forehead. When she reached the apartment building, she paused outside the door. The card felt like a stone in her pocket. Her hand trembled as she raised it to knock, but lowered it again. Instead, she stood beneath the awning, rain sliding down her face. The door opened before she touched the knob. Richard stood there, water beading on his hair, collar damp, eyes steady. He didn't ask questions. She held the card out. "I can't," she whispered, voice cracking. "I lied about Liam, about their threats. I lied to you." Her sob was quiet, as if trying not to disturb the still air. "I'm sorry," she continued, tears running freely. "I'm nothing like them. I don't want you to feel betrayed. I'm so sorry. I'm afraid I'm going to ruin your career. I'm afraid my past will cost you everything. I'm afraid my parents will hurt you and Liam." She stood frozen, rain dripping off her coat pockets. Richard simply reached out, took the card. Then he stepped aside. "Come in," he said softly. She crossed the threshold, shaken but awake. Inside, Liam stirred. Evelyn wiped her face, picked him up. He curled against her neck. Richard closed the door, moved to the window to pull down the curtain. The living room glowed in a golden hush, as if they were safeguarded inside. He returned, folded his coat, and met her eyes. "I believe you," he said. "And I still believe in us." She nodded, voice small. "I just couldn't stop the lie." He crouched down, calm and composed. "Truth matters more. You told it." They remained there, side by side. He didn't hug her. He just sat, steady, silent, unwavering like a street lamp during the storm. Morning light cast pale beams through the curtains. Liam lay sleeping in his crib. Evelyn and Richard shared toast at the table, a quiet meal after a turbulent night. He set a small envelope beside her plate. Evelyn glanced at it. "What's this?" He shrugged. "A start, if you're willing." Her fingers closed over the envelope. She looked up, eyes brighter than before. He took her hand and squeezed gently. She responded. A slow, hopeful return. Later that day, he appeared at her door, coat in hand. "Let's go," he said. They walked to the car together. Neither spoke much. The air was too new, too charged with promise to fill with words. When he parked outside the modest motel where her parents stayed, Evelyn stiffened. She looked down at her shoes, then at him. He noticed and offered his hand. She took it, firmly, for the first time. They stepped inside, side by side, moving toward an uncertain future. Together, resolved, and true. 9. The motel was older than its sign claimed. A flickering vacancy light buzzed above a crumbling sidewalk, and the red paint around the doors had long since turned to rust. Room 12 sat toward the back, just past a half-dead hedge and a row of warped vending machines. The neon above the office blinked weakly, as if the whole building were trying to disappear from memory. Richard parked without a word. His hands remained on the wheel, even after the engine stopped. In the passenger seat, Evelyn held Liam close against her chest. The boy had fallen asleep somewhere along the drive, fingers curled in his mother's collar, like ivy refusing to let go. She didn't move. Not yet. When she did finally open the door, her hands were steady, but her breath faltered. The winter air bit at her cheeks. Richard joined her, without prompting, walking beside her with silent steps, the way someone does when they know a war is about to begin and choose to stand on the same side of the line, even if unarmed. They reached the door of room 12, just as a shadow passed across the curtain inside. Evelyn didn't knock. She just waited. A click sounded, the chain sliding back, and the door opened to reveal Caleb Moore. Older, heavier, still carrying the weight of anger like it was armor. His eyes flicked from Evelyn to Richard and back again. "Well," he said, "if it isn't our little runaway." Evelyn didn't respond. Her gaze fell to the floor. Inside, the room smelled of burnt coffee and motel soap. Donna stood by the dresser, arms crossed, wearing a faded green blouse too tight at the collar. Her eyes sharpened as they landed on Richard. "This is him," she said, "the knight in polished chrome." Richard didn't acknowledge the jab. He reached into his coat, pulled out a sealed envelope, and placed it gently on the small round table beside a plastic ashtray. "That's what you came for," he said evenly. "No negotiations, no drama. You take it, you leave, and you don't come back." Caleb arched a brow, mocking. "Is this hush money?" "No," Richard replied. "It's silence insurance." Donna stepped forward. "You think we're scared of you?" "No," he said, "but you're scared of the people I work with. The ones in Baltimore, for example." He met Caleb's eyes, level and cold. "You remember 2009, Richard said. You left more than unpaid bills." Donna looked confused, but Caleb didn't. He turned a shade paler. "I've already given them your name," Richard added, voice quiet as frost. "They're waiting to hear whether I press send." There was a pause. Then Donna snatched the envelope from the table. "We'll go," she muttered. Caleb didn't speak again. He opened the door wider, a silent surrender, and the two walked out into the mist. No threats, no final words, just the sound of retreat. Evelyn stood frozen near the bed, Liam still sleeping in her arms. When the door shut, the silence inside felt impossibly wide. She turned to Richard. "How did you know?" "Sarah," he said. "She checked them out months ago, in case they ever came knocking." Evelyn's eyes welled, not with fear this time, but with the raw, aching gratitude of someone finally being protected instead of punished. She looked down, her voice a whisper. "They used to say I wasn't worth defending." Richard didn't respond with words. He just offered his hand. She took it without hesitation. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the air was still damp with threat. They walked back to the car slowly. Richard opened the passenger door and waited while she settled Liam in gently, then shut it with a careful click. The ride home was quiet, but it wasn't the silence of distance. It was the stillness that follows a storm, the moment you realize the walls held, that you're still standing, and that someone stayed with you through it. Back at the apartment, Liam stirred awake. His arms lifted toward Evelyn instinctively. She gathered him close, kissed the soft spot beneath his ear, and whispered something only he would understand. When she turned, Richard was still by the door, watching, waiting. "You didn't have to come," she said softly. "I know," he replied. Her smile was faint, but real. She reached for his hand again. This time, there was no shaking in her grip. Later that night, while Liam slept with one hand fisted around his rattle, Evelyn found the second envelope on the counter, one Richard hadn't mentioned. She opened it slowly. Inside was a deed, a key, and a note. It said only, "If you ever want to stop surviving and start living." She didn't cry. Not that night. But she didn't put the envelope away either. She kept it beside the crib, like something sacred, something earned. The semester began on a chilly Monday, the kind of morning that felt like it had been washed in silver. Frost clung to windows and street signs, and the sky above the East Village was a soft, uncertain grey. Inside the modest apartment, however, warmth bloomed gently between bowls of steaming oatmeal, the rhythm of soft lullabies, and the gurgling laughter of a one-year-old who had just learned how to say more with both hands and cheeks. Evelyn stood in front of the mirror by the door, adjusting the collar of her white coat for the third time. A navy blue badge, newly laminated, caught the light with its fresh print. Evelyn Moore, student nurse. Reinstated. Behind her, Richard waited with a steady calm, one hand resting on the stroller handle and the other holding a thermos of tea he made, unsweetened, just the way she liked. She looked at her reflection and exhaled. What if I've forgotten everything? The routines, the procedures, the late-night study groups. What if I fall behind? You won't, Richard replied without hesitation. You didn't forget how to be a mother. You won't forget how to care. She half smiled, but her eyes flicked toward Liam on the rug, surrounded by plush toys and plastic stacking rings, squealing with delight as he banged a spoon against a Tupperware lid. And what if he forgets me while I'm gone? She asked, quieter. Richard crouched beside the boy, brushing a crumb from his cheek. Then I'll remind him. Every hour. That reassurance came in the form of Teresa, a stout woman in her early 60s, hair always tied in a low bun and eyes like polished stone. She was a retired NICU nurse with decades of intuition and the kind of presence that made toddlers behave and new mothers exhale. The first time Evelyn met her, Teresa had simply looked Liam up and down and said, "He's got strong lungs, and you've done better than fine." From then on, Liam adored her, and Evelyn trusted her. School wasn't easy. It never had been. But something was different now, not in the curriculum, but in Evelyn herself. She returned to lectures with sharper focus. Her classmates, mostly younger, greeted her with curiosity at first, then with admiration. She tutored one struggling first year through anatomy. She bandaged a girl's wrist after a kitchen mishap and stayed late to help an older professor sort clinical files. Some whispered that she was the girl from the article. But no one said it to her face, because her presence, quiet, grounded, made the rumors feel too small. And at night, when she returned home, Liam would squeal and sprint across the living room, arms outstretched, his baby book flapping behind him like a cape. Evelyn would drop to her knees and catch him mid-flight. Teresa would gather her things and wink on the way out. Sometimes Richard was there too, waiting with takeout and a folded newspaper. Other times, he would show up later, when the house had gone dim and only the soft light from Liam's nightlight remained. He never knocked loudly, never intruded, but he was always there. One evening in early spring, they went to the park. The sky was lavender blue, warm enough to ditch coats, but not quite summer. The cherry blossoms had started to bloom. Families dotted the lawn, children screaming with joy near the merry-go-round. Liam chased butterflies, arms flapping like wings. Evelyn stood nearby, wearing a white dress that danced in the wind. Her hair was longer now, brighter. Her shoes were scuffed, but her steps were sure. Richard waited beneath a tree, one hand behind his back, the other resting casually in his jacket. When Liam tripped over a patch of dandelions and came up with something small in his hand, Evelyn turned. A velvet box. Her breath caught. Richard walked over, knelt gently before her, opened the box without ceremony. Inside, a slim silver ring, no diamond, just a soft glint and a promise. "I have no vows to offer," he said, voice low. "No lines rehearsed, just this. I have every reason to stay and no desire to leave." Evelyn didn't speak. She didn't need to. Liam barreled into them both, wrapping sticky arms around Richard's leg. "Daddy!" he cried. The word was clear, jubilant, like it had always been true. Richard scooped him up. Liam laid his head on Richard's shoulder with the comfort of 1,000 nights, even though it had only been dozens. Evelyn stepped closer. Her eyes shimmered, but not from surprise, from certainty. She nodded. Once, no tears, no grand gestures, just a quiet moment in sunlight, beneath branches newly in bloom. They sat together on a park bench, the ring still tucked safely inside its box. Evelyn rested her head on Richard's shoulder. Liam nestled between them, playing with a blade of grass. Birds chirped, wind passed through the trees like a lullaby. A pair of teenagers walked by, giggling. But on that bench, for those 3 people, one bruised woman, one stubborn man, one soft-cheeked boy, time slowed. There was no audience, no flashbulbs, no legal contract, only a silence filled with peace, only a pause deep enough to contain a beginning. And maybe that's what family was, after all. Not a ceremony, not a bloodline, just the choice to stay. Again. In a fast-paced world where reputations are tarnished by invisible rumors and kindness is easily misconstrued as motive, the stories of Richard, Evelyn, and Liam are a gentle reminder. Family doesn't have to begin with blood or title. Sometimes it begins with a silent nod, a hand extended when you have no one else, someone willing to stay even when there's no obligation. None of them are perfect. Richard is no savior, Evelyn is no hero, and Liam is just a child learning to trust in open arms. But that's what makes their bond real, even stronger than any traditional definition. Because sometimes family is a choice, and love is the only thing that doesn't need permission to exist.